The Finhorn and Lossie Trust for inviting me up here. I'm the chairman of Rivers and Fisheries Trusts of Scotland, which is a network of 25 fisheries trusts throughout all the catchments in Scotland. And we do a lot of work relating to the management of rivers and what fisheries and fish, but also the wider ecology. One of the big problems that's now emerging in all over the world is this invasive non-native species threat, which is also being slightly catalysed by climate change, because species that perhaps in the past were not a threat, with a couple more degrees of warming, suddenly become invasive. Now the Rivers Trust network in Scotland is uniquely placed to deal with these species because about 70% of the major problem invasive species are riparian or waterborne because of the nature of rivers. You've heard about Himalayan balsam, hogweed, knotweed, they're the obvious ones. There are some rather more sinister ones like signal crayfish. On the way are Chinese mitten crabs and all sorts of things like the killer shrimp that's come up the Danube. So it is quite alarming. Now the problem with invasive species is that once they're in, you've got a real problem because they're extremely hard to remove and there's a lot of collateral damage associated with their removal. So the primary effort that the trusts are going into is to actually stop the things getting in the first place. And each of these catchments now have a biosecurity plan which we've put together, and we're linking that up throughout Scotland so that we have a robust defence mechanism against invasive species. So prevention is the first thing, stopping things getting in. When they get in, the next priority is to jump on them quick. And if you can get on them quick, then often it is possible to actually remove them. So that's the next stop. And then the third stop is obviously managing them once they become well established. And if you take the Nairn and particularly the Findhorn, lower Findhorn catchment, where if anybody's been down below Findhorn Bridge, you see it is just a horrendous sort of Day of the Triffid style jungle of knotweed and hogweed. All of that could have been prevented if we'd had proper plans in place 30, 40 years ago when the problem started to emerge. So we've got a big task on our hands, but one of the encouraging things about what the Trust Network is now able to do, and it's doing this very much in partnership with Scottish Natural Heritage, Scottish Government and Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, who have a requirement to deal with this problem under the Water Framework Directive. They are acknowledging that we've got the network on the ground to get rid of these things. They've got the money and this strategic thinking to deal with this. And in partnership with them, we're working on this now national campaign to get rid of a lot of these species. And it is actually possible to do. We are now involved in a substantial mink eradication project. This is part of that programme. And it looks really quite possible to actually remove mink from large parts of Scotland. So I think we should take a lot of comfort from that. And I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years' time we've got really on top of the hogweed and knotweed problems in these catchments. So it's one of those rare things in the world of the environment where you actually can do something and do it properly and achieve a result. So the programme is, as I say, to try and link this all together on a national network. We also are trying to work with our friends and colleagues in the south, where there's a sister organisation, a Rivers Trust network down there, because obviously Britain being an island is uniquely well defended against invasive species, but it has to tackle invasive species management on a national scale, and we're very aware of some things sort of coming up through England and Wales, which we've got to try and stop at the border. So that's the sort of national network. The Finhorn and Lossie Trust has been extremely active in the whole biosecurity and invasive species management programme. And of course it's essential that all these organisations fit and work together, because if you have one weak link in the chain, then you have clearly a gap on the map where problems can occur and recur. So it's very important that we operate and hunt as a pack on this. So I commend the Finhorn and Lossie Trust for all the work they're doing on this. It's these are relatively small catchments with relatively small resources by many standards in Scotland, and they're doing an absolute power of work. A lot of that is based on a lot of very, very impressive local and voluntary effort. So it's a very important part of the jigsaw, and thank you for the opportunity to just give a national perspective.
Andrew, thank you very much. That's great. Bob, would you like to come and give us the local riverbank picture?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the river banks of the River Nairn. And thanks for all coming along today, and thank you, Fegus, for attending. Andrew's given you a quick update on the national scheme. On the local level, we've recently received a grant through RAFT's efforts, the Umbrella Trust organisation, and from SEPA to try and tackle this problem of hogweed and knotweed. And you can see some of the remains of hogweed and knotweed down to our left there and along the other bank. So Andrew indicated it's a serious problem in our rivers, particularly the Nairn and the Findhorn and the Lossie, and it will take quite considerable effort to try and control it. There have been controls over the years, but they've largely been piecemeal, and what our main job will be in the near future is to coordinate matters and start really at the top of the river and work down over the next few years. Our way of going about that is to train volunteers at the moment. I think shortly so we'll probably have to look at some contractors to really get on top of it, and then we have trained volunteers to control it over the next few years. Sandy, you'll see kitted up in white there, he's the bailiff for the Nairn. He's gone through the training programme organised by Chris, who's standing next to him. He's also gone through the pesticide use and control training programme, and they're ready to start action shortly this spring. But part of our main push this coming spring will be really to draw everybody together and start in a coordinated fashion. It's not just plants we have to consider. In this particular spot we picked it today because we have all of the non-native problems right on our doorstep here. We have the non-native plants, knotweed, hogweed and balsam primarily. But just in front of you, you'll see white butterbur, which is not quite as damaging as those other three, but that is a non-native plant as well. And it does block out the light and it is full growth for other native species in the area. That burn behind us is the Geddes burn, and we have crayfish, signal crayfish in there. The Nairn Angling Association have been working over the last 2 or 3 years, where's Willie? Yeah. To try and trap and at least contain and control the crayfish to the burn and try and release it spread elsewhere in the river. And so far they seem to have managed to do so. We've not had it turn up anywhere else, but a big push this year this next few years will be to try and contain that spread to the other rivers in the area and possibly look at some sort of means of eradication. So that's a tall order. And it's been mentioned the mink project is underway, and there's trapping underway in the area as well, which again has been fairly successful. So that's our local perspective, a lot of work to do. We're very grateful for the grant through RAFT and SEPA to get started on this, and we look forward to maybe receiving more monies in the future to really take the project on and try and control these rather nasty species. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bob. Do you want to come forward and say anything, Chris?
No, I think Bob's covered everything really, haven't you, Bob? I mean, yeah, you have.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and Sandy really is just here to show you what kit he has to wear. Everybody has to wear who should be spraying proper protective kit, and we have to go through a course, two-day course, Sandy?
Yeah, 2-day course.
Two-day course, and we train 10 people 2 weeks ago, and we're planning another course. But you can't just go out with the kit untrained legally anyway. We have to. The trust has paid for the training of a number of people, and we can pass all those bits of training on to others in due course. I think this might be the moment to ask you, Fegus, just to declare the launch of of this great campaign. We've mentioned that it's coordinated by RAFTs at the national level, and that SEPA have provided much of the funding for this particular campaign. But I'd also like to thank the Scottish Government through Fegus for all the money that they have provided for the Rivers and Fisheries Trust over the last 3 years. We've had a significant amount of money over the last 3 years, a slightly smaller amount this year, but it's welcome nevertheless. And actually without that seed corn we'd be very pushed to keep our work going and to evolve our work on the ground. So if you could launch the campaign, Fegus, that'd be great.
Well, thanks very much, Seymour. I didn't really know too much about invasive species, but I think the brief talks from Andrew and Bob have given a very clear explanation, so it's plainly a very important matter. I'm very happy to work with Seymour in the Highlander Museum campaign, and I think that's nearing successful completion. So well done, Seymour, and when you want something done, ask a busy man, so here Seymour crops up here as well in this campaign. And I guess as Minister for Tourism in Scotland, I'm actually for invasive species because we want more foreign tourists, we want the invasion of more human species, but we don't want more of the Japanese knotweed and the hogweed and the other species that have been referred to. And I know Richard Lockhead and others have worked to try to promote the campaign. I think in the Finhorn, the Lossie and the Nairn locally, and I'm delighted that there's a plan, an action plan to go ahead, and that so much work has been done by so many people here today, including Sandy, who seems to be the kind of main man in this enterprise, and his colleagues who've been trained, and that's great. And it seems to me that we've every hope that over the years the plan, if implemented and properly financed, will lead to the removal of the wrong type of invasive species. So I'm delighted to be asked here today and to learn a bit more about it, because I didn't really know much about it. I now feel a wee bit better informed, and that's always good for an MSP. And I'm very pleased to have been asked here to take part in this proceedings and to launch the campaign here in this beautiful part of Scotland. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Could we ask you to do one other thing, Fergus?
Sure.
Chris Worthington, step forward, please. Chris came to us as really on a work experience from RAF Kinloss, which, as you all know, sadly is closing down as an RAF base because of the demise of Nimrod. That's for another day. But Chris came to work with us because he's been interested in the countryside for years, and he's a countryman and he's interested in fishing, and he's been enormously helpful in plotting, along with people like Sandy, where the invasive non-native species are, particularly on the Nairn, but also on the Lossie too. And he has put together the bones, the very substantial bones of the plan, the coordinated plan that we are launching today. Sadly, he's become so proficient, he's been nabbed, he's been poached by the Kyle of Sutherland Fisheries Trust, because he knows he's been well trained down here. So this is, thank you, Chris, but farewell, and just like Fergus to give you a little present.
Good to me. Yes, many congratulations. Well done.
There we are. Yeah. The Nairn Malt. Thank you very much.